Hello, innovators. I'm Todd Weyandt, and welcome to the Bridging the Gap podcast sponsored by Applied Software. You're invited to join our construction innovation adventure with a mission to propel this great industry forward. My guest today is Sean Reid, VP of Construction Data Enablement Services for Aedo, a leader in data enablement solutions for construction. He is also a certified leadership coach and a recognized expert in operational planning, execution, leadership communication, and team performance. Welcome to the show, Sean.
Thanks for having me, Todd.
Absolutely. Well, let's get into kind of your origin story of how you got into the construction industry.
Well, how I got into the construction industry is part of my kind of bigger story of my career, and you could argue even my life journey, which has really always been about helping leaders to lead in one capacity or another. I began actually in my career in politics. I was working for a Canadian politician when I came out of university for a while. And then most of my career has been split between the construction world and the software and analytics world. So after politics for a few years, I went and worked for a software company, a business intelligence software company called Cognos for about 10 years. And I worked at that company. Primarily, I worked as the lead communication advisor for the CEO of the company and working with the management team on a host of different challenges, both in terms of external communications and internal communications. But really fundamentally, it was about how do we help the leadership team of this organization, this growing organization, lead, bring in new teams, integrate, and manage through, this is the time when 9/11 was going on. This is the time when the Great Recession was going on. There were a lot of ups and downs, and really learned a lot through that time of helping these leaders navigate a growing organization through both good times and bad times. After that chapter was done, I took a complete left turn, and that's when I moved into the construction industry and I was hired by an association that was working in Western Canada. I was hired to actually open up an association of construction contractors in Eastern Canada, and the association was focused primarily on working with the CEOs of primarily small and medium-sized contractors to help them really maximize and optimize the performance of their workforce. So this is an association really about removing barriers related to their workforce that might be preventing them from growing and entering markets that they want to enter into, or growing and recruiting and hiring and retaining the people that they want to do. And we would put together we developed multiple services to really help these leaders of these companies maximize and optimize the performance of their organizations. So I did that for about 10 years and had a great time doing that. And then at some point I decided, I would like to do this on my own full time. And so I eventually moved into an independent role for a time after that time with the association, where I was providing consulting services to the construction industry, primarily independently of the association. And most recently, in the last year, last 6 months even, I've actually brought my construction practice into a slightly larger company called Aedo that is focused on really helping construction companies transform the operations through people, process, and technology. And that all starts with the leadership and the vision of the leadership vision that these contractors have for their organizations. So that's the journey I've been on.
Yeah. Nice. Well, I'm curious, from your vantage point, what do you see as kind of the appeal and potential for the construction industry?
Well, one of the things that I am most excited about right now is I think whether the industry is ready for it and wants it or not, there is a massive change on the horizon. Well, we're already starting to see it. but
Sure.
there is uh, a fundamental need, whether you're looking at the ever tightening labor markets, the changes that we're seeing in buyer expectations about how their contractors support them, whether we're looking at the emergence of more competition globally because of the advent of innovation and technology, a lot of global competition. That the world is getting smaller, and so
Hmm.
local contractors who used to think they had kind of a regional monopoly are suddenly finding themselves with more competition. There are a number of changes, not to mention the emergence of robotics and other technology innovations that are literally changing the way that construction is done. All of this is coming together at a time that we can continue as constructors to do our thing the way we've always done it, but sooner or later we're going to see that the market is going to shut us out if we continue down that path.
Hmm.
And you're already seeing some general contractors, for example, really picking it, getting much more selective about the subcontractors they work with if those subs are not, for example, demonstrating a technical aptitude in terms of the way they're connecting and communicating with the general contractors. So the old ways are just not going to continue to be able to persist over the next few years.
Yeah, there's definitely a radical change happening throughout the construction for sure. How has the last year kind of permanently changed maybe the approach that people should take to leadership in the industry?
Yeah, I think leaders in the construction industry this last year, especially the leaders I've been working with for sure, have been learning a lot about empathy, learning a lot about
Mm.
um, connection and engagement with their people,
Hmm.
learning a lot about agility and resilience in response to changing circumstances, learning a lot about the importance of really being a student of your business and really understanding what's going on in your business and what are the key influencers that affect the performance of your business, so that you can master in those and not get distracted by things that maybe look important in the moment but end up being not essential to the long-term performance of your business. So I think overall what's happening for those contractors and those leaders of construction companies who are outperforming in this time, those are the ones who are diving deeper, who are using this opportunity to get more connected to their business, more connected to their
Hmm.
people, more connected to the processes that shape their business, more connected to their clients, um, not the ones who are kind of just in reaction mode and just letting things happen.
Yeah. What do you think's kind of the main driver that's spurring along that trend?
Well, I think there's been there's been no choice, with whether it's COVID or some of the other economic challenges that have come and some of the other disruptions that we've seen in this wild and crazy last 12 months or so. Um, eh, there's been no choice but to um, either get closer, get more intentional about understanding and how your business is working and where it's going, or to just sort of let go of the steering wheel altogether. It's like you're on an ice patch, and just you're
Hmm.
in slip, sliding around, and you've just lost control. Um, there have been too many different factors outside of what was already a complex industry to start with. There's now these new layers of factors to juggle, and um, it's just forced businesses to rethink their approach.
Yeah. I totally agree with that. All the onslaught of change that has happened for sure. I love the concept of being a student of your business. One of the things that stood out to me though when you were talking was you brought up the greater focus on empathy that
Mhm.
leaders are having throughout all of this, which is not typically something that you think of in huge supply throughout construction industry. Why do you think that the relating through empathy has been growing over the last year?
Well, I think part of that is because we've all been experienced. This is a shared experience. This COVID phenomena, for example, is a shared experience that it
Mhm.
has not not whether you are in the corner office or you are on the front line, you're experiencing COVID,
Sure.
and the challenges that
The
come
impacts are
with
real.
that. And so it's it's been it's been it's provided an opportunity for leaders to actually understand what's going on with some of their folks, in a deeper way, and given them this opportunity to then demonstrate that, because we are dealing with um, things that are having a profound impact on people's lives. And so I think that's just been a catalyst. I think there's been a recognition that um, that this is not normal. We're not in a particularly normal situation, and so that calls for something more. And so the next question that leaders, the ones who are succeeding, have been asking is, well, what do I do? Well, the first thing is I got to get better connected with my people. They are,
Mhm.
especially in construction, they are they are my business. I need to understand how they're doing. I need to be a student, again, to use that phrase. I need to be a student of what they're going through, and that's what empathy is all about. Is really creating a deeper connection. And so the construction companies that are continuing to succeed and excel in spite of all these challenges are those who are pivoting in that way and actually becoming much more empathetic, and much more engaged with their people.
Do you see that as something that will be a long-term effect of all this, that will stay, or will people start slowly kind of creeping back into habits that they might have had before all this started?
I think it's going to have to stay, maybe not because the leaders choose to. I think the most forward-looking leaders already get it, or they have gotten it over
Mhm.
and they're going to continue to do this. They're going to see the fruits of it, and they're going to continue. But I think what has continued to happen in spite of, and we're starting to see, for example, over the last year, in different regions across North America, we're seeing, for example, apprenticeship registration has declined in many regions. The and there's some understandable reasons why that might be. There's COVID. People have other things on their mind other than registering for apprenticeship sometimes, I guess. But
Mhm.
the what's happening is the in spite of the ups and downs of COVID and some of these other things, the labor market continues to shrink, and it becomes, and therefore the the workforce has has the reins in some ways, in a way, and now they have the ability. They're seeing, in this year, they've seen how some contractors and some companies have responded empathetically, with
Mhm.
agility, with resilience, and are outperforming, and some have not. And so in a tightening workforce, labor market, suddenly our workforce has a new thing to be looking for when they're looking for that place where they want to go and build their career. And
Mhm.
empathy is becoming, and that connectedness to the employee has become a new, um, it was always there, but it's become of renewed importance, I think, in the in the construction labor market. And so, if as the owner or the leader of your company, you have a choice. Do I want to continue to compete for talent? If I want to continue to compete for talent, then I'm going to have to develop this empathy and this engagement, and be the kind of company that stays connected with its people.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, I think that the culture aspect is huge, and is the impact that it can have. I think it's drastically overlooked and underrated, that you
Mhm.
can really solve a lot of problems and come up with new innovations and different things with a healthy culture that is focused on the people. I mean, as you said earlier, that, I mean, that is the business, is your people. Without them, you don't have anything. So
Yeah.
why would you not take time and really focus on that?
Well, it is, in every other industry, uh, there's this notion of competing for talent. And how do you compete for talent? You make yourself more attractive for that talent to want to come. And at some points in the life of our industry, in the construction industry, sometimes we wring our hands and we blame government or we blame some other factor for why we're not finding enough talent. I think what we're learning, if we've learned nothing else, I'm hoping that what we've learned this year is that we have to compete for that talent. We have to change
Mhm.
ourselves. We have to become more connected, more empathetic, more agile, more resilient, more performance driven, in order to be that attractive place that people are going to want to work and commit to. So, we
Yeah.
that's our choice. We can compete for talent, or we can be um, left out of the future of this industry.
Yeah, for sure. One of the other kind of big undercurrents of change happening over the last year, at least that has really been ramped up over the last year, is with the digital transformation
Mhm.
happening, with everybody having to go remote and bring in and adopt technology at such a more rapid clip. Well, what kind of impact has that had on leadership throughout the industry?
Yeah, I think our industry has at different times struggled to kind of know what to do with technology in some cases. We've always had technical
Mhm.
innovation. I mean, this notion that the construction industry doesn't know how to innovate doesn't, that's not really true. We have innovated in many areas as an industry over time. I think what is true is we haven't used um, data and technology to really help transform the way that we do business. What hasn't changed is a lot of the processes the ways of running a construction company have
Mhm.
basically stayed the same for a long, long time. And only now are we starting to see, with the emergence of modular construction and fabrication and robotics I mentioned earlier, and other technological changes. Now you're starting to see some pretty fundamental process change, some agitation in the market, and it's a little bit less comfortable to stay in our entrenched ways about the way we were
Mhm.
doing construction. So now we've got, I think, we've got companies that are paying more attention to process and paying more attention to their people, like we just talked about, and paying more attention to these things because they realize that if they don't, the market's going to shift around them and they're going to get left out. And so the same companies that are first investing in their people, then investing in process and process transformation, are saying, okay, the next question is, well, how do I enable this? How do I
Mhm.
actually make this so I can continue, my people can continue to do work and do the work that I've hired them to do and that they're good at, but that we can do it more productively, more seamlessly. And that's where the technology conversation comes in. How can I actually enable this to happen, especially at scale? If I want to be a growing
Mhm.
company, how do I enable this at scale? Well, that's where software, data, and technology can help support that process.
Yeah. So what does that, high productivity, high performing construction company really look like in practice?
It starts with it starts with the leadership of that company setting setting a clear goal, and
Mhm.
then asking, how will we know when we've succeeded? How will we know when we've met our target? If you're not ever consciously asking yourself, how will we know, you're never actually going to be a performance driven organization, because performance for what purpose, to what end?
Mhm.
If you never, how can I get everybody moving in the same direction if we don't actually know where we're going,
What direction?
and what that actually looks like? And this is where, everybody's got a vision statement. Every lots of companies have vision statements, and lots of
Mhm.
companies also have, at the if you think of it as a pyramid, lots of companies have vision statements and value statements. And then a lot of companies have some sort of ability to manage the individual performance of their people. But in many cases, especially in the small and medium-sized businesses, there's not much between those. There's not much that gives any definition to what does that vision and those values look like this year? What are we going to go and accomplish this year to manifest that vision? What is this
Right.
department, what is estimating going to go and do this year to contribute to the vision? And then how are we going to know if we have actually made progress towards that? How
Hmm.
are we going to know that their contribution has been of value in making us move that? So the driven construction company is one that moves beyond mere vision, moves beyond frontline day-to-day accountability, and actually draws a clear line between vision all the way down to frontline execution, with clarity about both the numbers and the narrative. The how are we going to know we're going to be there, and the what are we going to do? There's got to be
Hmm.
that sort of cascade, that line that connects everything that the organization is doing to that clear vision.
Yeah, I love that. With my team, I always talk about what's our big win going to look like.
Mm,
So, what when we think about our vision for whatever time period we're looking at, what is at the end of the day, how do you know that you won?
yeah,
And how do you connect that then to everybody's role on that? So you have a big win of the whole team. This is what it's going to look like if the team wins.
yeah.
And then breaking it down on the individual level, this is how you know personally that you won. Over and above your KPIs and your metrics and everything, what is kind of the end goal? What do you want to look like at the end of the time period that you're casting your goal for? And then
Yeah.
I think a big part of a leader's job is to communicate that and get that buy-in, because it's one thing if the leader comes down on high and says, this is what I think the big win is going to be and this is what
Mhm.
your win's going to look like. But if you don't have the buy-in, do you really have anything? Then nobody's bought into it. Nobody's going to go in that direction.
That's right. And I think one of the traps that leaders that I've seen in the construction industry fall into sometimes, especially as they're trying to grow, for example, and they're trying to add new people, new personnel, is they, rather than spending more energy on getting clearer about what the goals are and clearer about what the measurements of success are, they
Mhm.
keep it in their head. They keep those definitions locked in their head, maybe. But then they look around and they see people doing it wrong. They see people doing something that doesn't match what's in their head. And instead of taking it out of their head and defining it for people, they simply go to that person and say, "You're doing it wrong." And they
Right.
say, "Look, let me show you how to do it." And they end up micromanaging, and that demoralizes and dehumanizes their workforce and creates friction. And so the real challenge for performance driven leaders in construction is to put more work into defining what the quantifiable aspects of your vision are going to look like, and and pointing your workforce to them, and then asking the question, how to the workforce, how can you help us move in that direction? So
Mhm.
rather than I'm going to tell you what you need to do and I'm going to handhold you through this process, you empower your workforce and your teams to say, what can you contribute? What are you going to contribute to help us get to this quantifiable outcome that we're striving for? And as
Mhm.
soon as people start to see that, as people start to see the definition of what they're trying to work for, we have the some remarkably skilled people in our industry. These are not dumb people. We can figure this out, and we'll get excited about it because I can see that path now. I know how to get to there. Here, this is what I'm going to do,
Right.
and I feel empowered, and I'm feeling much more engaged because of that.
Yeah, absolutely. I like to think of it as the leader kind of sets the framework for it and
Yeah.
says, here's the boundaries of what we're doing. And then you really get success and buy-in when you allow and you trust the team to fill in the details. And you're there coaching them along the way and therefore help and support. But it's them kind of filling it in, and you get a lot of really great creative ideas that you wouldn't have thought of because you crowdsourced it.
That's right. And crowdsourcing is a great term for it. You've basically what you've done is you've empowered your workforce. And there's a term in the analytics space called, you've democratized decision making in your organization. So if
Mhm.
it's so easy, especially in volatile markets, to want to control everything as the leader and bring autonomy back only to you, so I have all the authority and the decision making and bring all that control. But what that ends up doing is totally demoralizing your team and completely, really turning them into, it commoditizes our people
Mhm.
to the point where they're just waiting for you to tell them which lever to pull next. That's not bringing any value. That's not adding value to your organization. So rather, if you can articulate, clearly what we're trying to reach for, and then empower your people to make decisions based on their expertise in their realm to to what's going to get them to that outcome,
Mhm.
you're going to have a much more engaged workforce, and you're actually probably going to get, as you say, you're going to get better solutions because you're going to get solutions that are crowdsourced, but also closer to the point of decision. They're closer to the point of where the rubber's actually hitting the road. So they're going to be grounded
Yeah.
in a practicality that's going to be better and a lot more sustainable over time.
Yeah, totally agree with that. So what are some of the determining factors then for you when you're going in to, assess a firm's kind of operational execution?
Mhm.
What do you look at?
Well, I look at, so the typical process that we would begin to work with a client on would be exactly as I talked about before. Is we kind of look at that, and not every organization is a rigid pyramid, so I don't want to get too hung up on that. But we certainly look at the
Mhm.
question of what are the key planning elements and the key operational elements that you have in place today and not. And typically, what you'll see is an organization will be kind of have a patchwork. So you probably most companies have some sort of articulation of at the highest level of their vision and values, but that's probably on a dusty sheet or binder somewhere that never gets opened up, or
Right.
maybe it's nice copy on your website, but the next layer down is, well, how does that look 3 to 5 years from now? How are we going to know that we've manifested that vision in any meaningful way? What does that look like from a numbers and a narrative standpoint? And then beyond that, what are we going to do this year to make progress on that as an organization? And then what is that the contribution, quantifiable contribution that each department is going to make to that effort? Typically, what you'll see when we go in and do that assessment with our clients, you'll see a patchwork. You'll see some departments that are really have it nailed down. You'll see some companies that maybe they've got a great 1 year plan, but they don't have a lot of vision for what they're actually working towards beyond that. Or you might
Mhm.
see a great 3 to 5 year plan, but they're just missing the rigor around making sure that every year we're moving the needle on this front. So you're going to get a patchwork. And so what we typically do is suggest to our clients that they begin by just doing an assessment of where they are in terms of their kind of the planning cascade,
Mhm.
and then build, fill in the gaps, build out the process, make sure that the people that you've got in place are not actually undermining all that work, but are actually enabling that work. And then we talk about the technology. We put it after we've kind of got the people and the process in place. Then we begin to talk about, okay, what's the data that you need to really make sure you're making progress on this? What's the technology that we can put in place to make sure that that cascade is really happening the way we want it to? So it starts, long story short, it starts with an assessment of, how, what is the state of our planning framework? What is the state of our performance system in our organization?
Nice. So one of the other kind of undercurrents, yeah, of change going on throughout the industry is as more younger generations are coming in, not only just into the industry, but really taking on more leadership roles within the firms. What kind of impact does that having on the operations and
Yeah.
the culture and even the technology?
It's amazing to see. That's the part that I'm so excited about. There's this generational shift happening, and so many of that next generation are coming in. You know, they're literally in many cases, as you know, it's parents handing it off to younger, their sons and daughters to lead their organizations.
Mhm.
And so when that handoff happens, often it's like, the vision of the founder or the parent, was to run a comfortable lifestyle business, essentially. A business that, supported the community, the local community, employed a few people and kept things going. But it was essentially, let's just do our thing. Let's get up every morning, build something great, go to bed, and
Mhm.
that's the end. But the younger generation, there's a lot of ambition coming into the next generation of the construction industry right now. And a lot of, not that the old way was bad, it was fine, but there's a different vision now. And so people are coming in, the next generation are coming in saying, no, I kind of want to be about something more than that. They're looking at other industries, they're looking around at, the really, the breakthrough industries. I mean, you could talk about the stereotypical ones like Apple and Amazon and all these companies, but there's lots of examples out there of innovative companies and innovative business models. They're kind of like, that looks really interesting to me. What would that look like in my, in this construction world that we're in now? And so there's this kind of
Mhm.
this new renewed vigor and enthusiasm for business transformation that the next generation is bringing out. We want to be, it's not just what we want to do, but what matters more, to me as this new generation is the Simon Sinek stuff, the why and the how. Why are we doing
Mhm.
this? They're asking bigger questions about what's in it for us, even in doing this. And they're asking really innovative questions about how. Why do we always do it this way? It doesn't seem to work very well. It's painful. Has anybody ever bothered to change it, or try? And there's a new, what I'm seeing from my clients at least is a new desire to not be comfortable with just business as usual and to actually kind of try things and experiment and try new things and create a more innovative and dynamic culture in their organizations.
Yeah. So why do you think that that kind of mindset change and that desire is growing now?
Well, I suppose I haven't seen the data to prove this out per se, but my sense is that, well, I do know that, for example, the younger generations, even I'm 45, 47. I mean, maybe I'm in denial about being 47. But I'm in my mid 40s, and I'm somebody who, and I think my generation and the generation that's following me, we are very aware of and put a high premium on meaning in our work and
Mhm.
connection and value in our work. It's not Work is not just a means to a paycheck for us. We
Right.
have to feel like what we're doing has some value, has some more transcendent purpose, not to get too philosophical, but
It
it
matters in some
it
way. Yeah.
matters. And
Yeah.
so I think there's this desire in the new generation of construction leaders to see that, what to ask questions about, why are we doing this in the way we're doing it, and what are we actually trying to accomplish? And they're asking bigger questions about this business that they're responsible for. And as a result of that, that's opening up a whole new series of questions and opportunities for these leaders. And they say, oh, you know what, maybe some of the things that we were doing aren't aligned with our values the way, maybe some of the ways that we were doing things were actually dehumanizing our workforce and demoralizing. And maybe we want to be a company that actually dignifies our people, and
Mhm.
creates an environment of innovation and empowerment. And so as soon as you start asking those questions, uh, new innovation and opportunities emerge. And I think that's what we're seeing.
Yeah. So asking those questions though can cause some friction with the different mindsets. So what are some tips to kind of handle that transition and make it little smoother?
Well, I mean, do you mean, sorry, just to clarify, do you mean with the previous generation in terms of like the outgoing leadership versus the incoming leadership? Is that what
Yeah.
you're mean?
Yeah. It can feel, asking those questions may be totally innocent of like, well, we just want to improve it, but it can come across more, um, oh, they're trying to change it. They don't like what we did, and they think that what we
Mhm.
did is bad potentially. They just want to redo everything, and they don't know what worked, and this is what used to work. So, how
Sure.
do you kind of alleviate some of that friction between those different mindsets?
Well, if the founding generation is still engaged in the company, then I would suggest that a really important first conversation is to understand what motivates that founding generation. And really become empathetic. This is where, if you want to build an empathetic company, start by being empathetic towards the founder that you're dealing with, and really try to understand what their motivations were, and
Hmm.
and in so doing, try to draw connections between where your vision is going and what their motivation is, and that's probably where you're going to start. So
Hmm.
if the motivation is, um I don't know what the motivation of the founder might be. Maybe profitability is an extremely important factor for them, or fiscal um, sustainability or that sort of thing of the business. You know, how can your vision for the way you want to do construction, or the way you want to do business as the new generation of leadership, how can that be applied to sustain the motivation of the founder? In other words, how
Hmm.
can you use innovation and um, engagement and some of the things that you want to bring to actually drive a more profitable business, or to drive fiscal sustainability and help that founder see the achievement of their motivations. So start where they're, with the problems that are on their mind, because what we're talking
Hmm.
about is the new generation is all about how and why. So let's apply, whereas the older generation was a little bit more about what. So that's okay.
Hmm.
Let's take that what of the founding generation, and let's bring some of that innovative how that we want to, and to solve some of those practical challenges that the founding generation might have been motivated by. So that's it's long story short, that's just an effort to find common ground. Let's
Hmm.
go and solve the problem that the founder thinks is the problem, but let's do it in a new way, and show them how that these new processes can actually achieve their outcome, and actually achieve it in a more powerful way.
Yeah, love that, and love the full circle going back to empathy from the beginning of the conversation.
It's the
uh,
secret sauce, and unfortunately in our industry, as I'm sure you know, we we don't do that very well.
well, it's hard.
Typically, yeah, and we typically solve things uh by duking it out, a lot of times, not always, but that's unfortunately something that's we're trying to get past, but that's something that sometimes bogs down our industry. And it doesn't have to be that zero sum thing. It can be,
Yeah.
we can take a new approach. We can find those win-wins. We can find the empathetic approach. And what a better time to do that for the new generation, to start practicing that muscle, working that empathy muscle in bringing along their founders.
Yeah, absolutely. So, in light of everything that we've talked about already, Sean, how can all this change really allow firms to better capitalize and leverage their data better?
So we've got an amazing opportunity right now. So we've never been in a better spot in terms of having the technological resources to access the data in our industry,
Mhm.
access and to know what's going on in every aspect of our business. We also have the imperative now with the market, changing market expectations, changing market dynamics, tightening labor markets, more competition. There's an imperative to get more rigorous, to get closer to our businesses, and to become um, more resilient and more performance focused in terms of how we manage our business. And when you combine those two things, and on top of that, the third factor is there's actually proof that shows that the companies that really master in this, the companies that really leverage their data to drive business transformation, do so and achieve accelerated growth over their competition. So when you take the
Mhm.
fact that we've never been in a better place to leverage data, we've never had a higher necessity to become real masters and students of our business. And there's proof and evidence that when we do so, we accelerate. That's a perfect storm and a perfect opportunity for businesses to step into and step forward and take their companies to the next level. And that's what this next generation of construction leadership that we're seeing are picking up on more and more, and that's where they're taking it.
Yeah, I agree with that. The hesitation on doing it quicker and making those connections is kind of baffling to me because it seems so obvious. Why would you not connect all those data points and um, those interest areas together?
Well, it's funny because I was talking to a contractor just the other day about this, and a lot of the market is not yet at the point where what I would call a burning platform. We're not quite at the place where everybody's feeling the pain of this problem that they need
Uh,
to innovate. We're still at this point where the early adopters on this are still are that they're seeing the opportunity down the road, and they're seeing the market shift, and they're making the move early. We're still at the point where we're not at the point yet where it's a problem. So for people, there's different adopters at different stages in any market, and we're at a situation where, yeah, it may not make sense to us because we're thinking about this all the time, but the others will come around because they're going to have to. The mindset of the market is shifting. The demands of buyers of construction services are shifting. The expectations of the workforce are shifting. Um, you know, let's have this conversation again in 2 or 3 years, and I suspect we'll be seeing a lot more evidence of broader adoption of this direction.
yeah, I think you're probably right there. And looking over those few years in store for us, I think construction is going to look like a very different industry over the next,
Yeah,
10 years out versus what it did 10 years ago. You're going to see
no
a
question,
big shift in mindset and workflow.
no question about it.
Well, how do people get in touch with you, Sean, and find out more about what you're doing?
Well, they can find me. My email address is sean@aedo.ai. So sean@aedo.ai, or they can find me on LinkedIn. Those are probably the best two ways to connect with me.
Awesome. And final question, what does innovation mean to you?
Innovation is all about change and transformation to fulfill a purpose. So innovation for me is about um, not just inventing stuff for its own sake, but actually implementing change to fulfill a bigger purpose.
Yeah, hitting at that why. Why are you doing
Yep.
something?
Why are you doing it? And then being creative about the how.
Nice. I like it. Well, Sean, thanks so much for coming on and the conversation.
Yeah, it was my pleasure, Todd. Thanks for having me.